Hi, welcome to the California Statewide Law Enforcement Association. I'm Communications Director Terry Cox, and with me is Legal Counsel Jim Vitko. Jim, thanks for being with us today because you are so good at answering the questions that our members have. And one of the many questions we get has to do with off-duty misconduct.
Well, thank you for having me. Much appreciated, and I always get a kick out of talking to the membership and answering questions that come our way. First, let me preface my comments saying that the vast majority of our members don't end up getting involved in incidents off duty. They don't end up getting arrested. They don't end up having incidents which impact their jobs. But we do get calls often enough where I do want to address some of the potential consequences of poor choices and how that could impact them in the workplace.
What kind of poor choices are we talking about? Talk to us about what off-duty misconduct is.
Well, it could be something as severe as an arrest, or it could be conduct which raises potential conflicts of interest. Or in the cases of our peace officers, there are certain behaviors, although they are legal, they bring discredit to the department. They do things that cast the department or themselves as a peace officer in a bad light, and all those things could result in discipline.
So let's talk about the consequences of off-duty misconduct. What's that going to mean to you on the job?
Well, let's start with arrests. Obviously, an arrest is going to impact the affected employees most because they're taken into custody, they end up serving time, or at the very minimum, they are having to deal with, in some cases, the same police agencies that they've dealt with professionally. It's also important to note that when someone is arrested for off-duty conduct, that although normally CSLEA would pick up legal defense for duty-related issues, or we deal with the administrative process, when you are arrested for off-duty conduct that is outside the course and scope of your employment, you're not entitled to representation. Assuming that you've cleared the criminal hurdles and you make it through that, now members have to deal with adverse actions and discipline. For example, Government Code Section 19572, subsection K provides for discipline after conviction of a felony or misdemeanor involving moral turpitude. The discipline under this section many times will result in very harsh penalties up to and including dismissal. There's also a number of issues which can affect employment which is not necessarily disciplinary in nature after you're arrested. For instance, if you are incarcerated for a period of time, you could be AWOL from your position, which means that after 5 days, you are termed to have automatically resigned, and you could find yourself out of a job when you finally do get out of jail. Also, there's kind of a special note for those that are involved with driving under the influence. One of the consequences of that is that you normally will find that your driver's license is suspended for a time, and since most of our peace officers and non-peace officers are required to have a license and to drive while on duty, they can find themselves no longer meet the minimum qualifications for the job and end up being impacted in that way.
So if someone should find themselves arrested, what do you suggest? What are your recommendations?
I would suggest, and I know this is hard to do, but I would suggest being professional and to be mindful of your attitude. Understand that what you say and how you say it oftentimes becomes part of an administrative action. Another thing that they might want to think about is being careful about providing statements. Remember, I understand that most of our members are either peace officers or regularly deal with peace officers, and they're used to seeing them in a different light and they want to be cooperative. But if somebody is offering you the right to remain silent as part of an admonition after a crime, you may seriously want to think about not providing a statement without and having an attorney present. In other words, take advantage of your rights. Also, for peace officers, you may need to identify yourself as such, particularly if you're in possession of a weapon. It's important to do that professionally, and whatever you do, don't ask for special favors based on the fact that you're a peace officer. That will always come back and be a factor down the line, particularly when we're back to that 19572 section, which means you're reflecting negatively upon your agency. Finally, it's always recommended that you contact a criminal attorney at some point during the process, even if it's something as minor as a shoplifting arrest or petty theft, because you need to understand that no matter how minor it may be, you're going to have consequences down the line administratively. Most departments have requirements that you notify them if you are arrested. You need to do that, you should do that. But if your employer is going to talk to you about the circumstances, remember that there is a distinct possibility it's going to lead to administrative discipline, and you have the right to representation. So at that point, you may want to ask for a representative and then give us a call at CSLEA.
So Jim, are there types of misconduct that aren't considered illegal, but if one of our members acts in a certain way, will still be in trouble when he or she returns to work?
Sure, and this is especially true for our peace officers. If they're doing something that might bring discredit to themselves, or they might bring discredit to the department, even if that conduct would otherwise be legal, they might be subject to discipline. For example, a peace officer who might be at a public event with his firearm hanging out of his belt. He has the right to have a firearm. If he's got his badge, he can display it. But if he's out in public in an off-duty situation with that gun hanging out, he might be subject to discipline. Another situation might be an officer who is displaying some indicia of the department and happens to be in a bar drinking and is photographed. Again, anybody who is over the age of 21 can drink, and there's no prohibition against being in a bar, but it casts both the officer and the department in a bad light. As a final note, there are also some things that peace officers should keep in mind that aren't directly related to the arrest, but could still impact their ability to do the job. If you do something and you lose the right to have a firearm, and things like restraining orders or domestic violence issues might impact your ability to carry a gun. And if one of the qualifications of your job is that you need to carry a weapon and you can't do that, it's going to impact whether or not your employment is going to continue. Our members could also be disciplined under Government Code Section 19990 for displaying behavior which is inconsistent with and incompatible with their jobs. Some examples of that might be using the prestige or the influence of the job for private gain, using state time or facilities for private gain or advantage, having access to confidential information and misusing that.
Basically, there's a lot to cover here as far as misconduct. If our members have any questions, they should call you, but they should also know that you can't represent them for something that happened off duty.
Correct. If something occurs that is outside the normal course and scope of their duties, particularly criminal behavior that's occurring away from the workplace, they need to consult with a criminal attorney. However, at the point where you are going to start interacting with your employer again, where you're going back to work, it might be helpful if they gave us a call and we can discuss their legal rights with regards to the administrative matters and give them a heads up as to some of the things that might be coming down the line.
Just a little bit of advice.
A little bit of advice.
All right. And one thing we haven't covered, and we've covered a lot of types of misconduct, is social media, and that's huge. And we're going to save that for another video.
Absolutely.
All right, I look forward to that. Thank you. If you have any questions, any suggestions, any comments, feel free to give us a call or send us an email. The information is there on your screen. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.